Morning, everybody. I was a little nervous while I was sitting there to see if the cheering squad over here would bring as much energy for the second speaker. I was also fully prepared to make sure that happened in the event that it didn't. One of the perks of the job, I suppose. So with our time today, I want to talk about three things. I want to review the digital world that we live in and see if we can't get some additional perspective on that world. I then want to introduce a concept that we've come up with at Couchbase called the massively interactive enterprise. And then I want to close out and talk about how Couchbase can help you be successful in that digital world by becoming one of those massively interactive enterprises. Sound like a plan? Okay. How many of you would believe it if I told you that right now we're living in a world that has more change than humankind has ever seen? Show of hands. So decent, but there's some of you that would maybe say, wow, that seems like a pretty big statement. Well, according to the World Economic Forum, we are on the brink of a technology revolution that will fundamentally alter the way we live, work, and relate to one another. In its scale, scope, and complexity, the forum says, the transformation will be unlike anything humankind has ever seen. It's pretty phenomenal when you think about it. Now, I took a lot of classes as I was going through my academic career, and I was good at a decent number of them. But one of them that I wasn't so good at, or my teachers would say, history didn't like me, not me not liking history. So it took me a little while to come up with this perspective, but I actually went back and did a little research. The first industrial revolution started 250 years ago, and it was about water and steam. 100 years later, the second one, about electric power, and 100 years after that, it was about electronics and information technology. But this fourth revolution is about the convergence of the physical, digital, and biological spheres. And imagine how quickly it's coming on the heels of the third evolution, building on all the momentum that we saw just a few years ago, but exceeding in the pace of change and the impact to business. And to whet our appetite a little bit about what's possible when companies do successfully bring these worlds together, I want to show you a video in a moment about a company called Tommy Hilfiger that is successfully transforming and innovating. They're a multi-billion-dollar fashion and apparel company. A lot of us wear Tommy Hilfiger gear. They transact in over 90 countries, if you can believe that. And they are very focused on creating the next generation customer experience. Let's take a look.
We're embracing innovation as we enter a new era, revolutionizing the fashion industry and looking to the future. We're pioneering innovative new technologies that allow us to work smarter, better, and faster. In 2015, we revolutionized the buying and selling journey for our wholesale customers with the industry's first ever digital showroom. What started as a vision for the future became a reality. Today, we have digital showrooms in 13 countries with 24 theaters and 59 workstations. By the end of 2017, we'll have 26 theaters and 78 workstations, from Europe to the Americas to Asia and everywhere in between. But we won't stop there. By advancing the technology, we've taken our digital showroom even further, constantly evolving to meet our customers' needs. We're immersing our customers into our world from the moment they arrive, creating an exclusive bespoke service. We're sharing our brand heritage and our seasonal inspirations so our customers understand the collections better than ever. And we're making it easier for them to take control. In just one click, everything is displayed on ultra-high-definition 4K screens, from product details and pricing to buying history, delivery dates, and more. We're bringing greater ease to creating, editing, strengthening, and perfecting unique assortments for every customer. With the selection process complete and no additional paperwork or admin needed, a summary is sent directly to the customer's personal account. It's that simple.
Pretty good stuff, huh? Congratulations to Tommy Hilfiger for continuing to push the boundaries. You know, it's interesting, when we get into this pace of change, we often use words like disruption, and people often quickly go to the downside of disruption. Well, what happens if I don't get this right? But the reality is there's significant upside to disruption, and if you look at Tommy Hilfiger and what they're doing, transforming the shopping experience, completely changing the way customers interface with them. And as one of my colleagues said last night, let's put it simply, holograms are cool, right? And so I think this is about embracing change and figuring out how to drive business models. I was recently had good fortune of spending time with John Chambers, who's the ex-CEO chairman of Cisco and is now a venture capitalist. And John was recently quoted in a session saying that 40% of today's businesses will fail in the next 10 years. And he said 70% will attempt to drive a digital transformation, but only 30% of those will be successful. He was in a room like this of executives across large companies, and he literally went on to say if he wasn't making them sweat, he should be. Talking about the potential of disruption and the necessity to take that seriously and invest. If we look further at some additional market evidence on how this is, the reality is all of us as companies have a long way to go. And while 37% of organizations have already started down this journey of digital first, 45% of their IT colleagues suggest they're in the early innings of that. And they have a long way to go before they're going to be ready to truly innovate from a digital perspective. According to McKinsey, this is a pretty compelling stat, only 8% of business models at current companies are going to be viable into the future. So you have to transform, you have to build new businesses, and technology is going to be the way to do that. Now, why is that the case? PwC research tells us that customers, us in the room as we transact digitally, we are the single biggest force of driving change for companies around the world. And it's our healthcare provider, our financial institutions, how we shop, how we do things like online gaming, how we view content. We are demanding a different experience. And you can imagine if you went and purchased gear from Tommy Hilfiger the new way, you would never go back to the old way, rifling through racks of clothes, not being able to find your size, and walking out frustrated. It's just we demand a new experience, and companies that fulfill that experience will prosper. Now, how are they going to do that? Each one of us, and I believe the reason you all are sitting in the room and why we get up every day, is about building technology to allow us to get closer to our customers. But in order to do that, it's not just the technology that enables a customer to interface with a company. It's how do we drive interactions inside of a company. So not just human-to-human interaction, but human-to-machine interaction. And as we all know more and more, it's about machine-to-machine interaction. And this isn't just about changing the way that customers interact. It's how do employees do their jobs? How do partners across the ecosystem interface with companies to build, operate, and fulfill? And I'm going to spend a fair amount of time this morning digging into this concept of the massively interactive enterprise and what that means and what kind of applications we need to be thinking about building to be successful in these digital worlds. Now, before I really start digging in on interactions, I want to talk about this concept that we at Couchbase call engagement. And the reality is, as we think about interactions, multiple interactions over time with a successful outcome derive positive engagement. And if you break that down to a simple human interaction, if I go and meet one of my colleagues and we have an interaction, and then the second time we draw upon the conversation we have and we build on that, and that next interaction we have a more shared understanding and it's better, and then if we do that again, well, now we are building engagement, albeit human engagement, but you can see how interactions over time drive engagement. It's about processing, learning, understanding, interpreting those interactions over time, and that's what drives engagement. And I'll come back to this term engagement in a minute after I go through some more on interactions. So let's look at this term interactions. In the digital world, the reality is there are far more interactions than there are transactions. And let me use a very high-level example that we're all used to reinforce this point. Let's say that we were going to go to an e-commerce site and buy, say, a pair of jeans, right? We all probably have different e-commerce sites that we would go to. God knows we have different sizes and styles. And we would all self-select into the thing that we want. And then we go through the experience that we've all become very accustomed to. We want to see the video of the jeans, in this case, spinning around. We want to be told what that could be paired with. We want to understand what loyalty programs we may be benefiting from to take advantage of better prices. We may, be in a bind where we need something to be shipped pretty quickly, and so on and so forth. Eventually, we put something into a shopping cart and we hit purchase. Well, if I take you through that journey, the reality is only that purchase is a transaction. Everything up to that purchase is an interaction. And if you think about the research by PwC, what's driving disruption is customers. And why is that? Because customers are demanding a next generation experience. So how a company builds applications that touch the customer in this case, that manage those interactions, is more important than the transaction itself. And despite the fact that we're in a time of more change than the world has ever seen, from my perspective, the number of transactions hasn't really increased. It's the number of interactions and how we transact that's changed. If you think about banking, are we actually doing more deposits and withdrawals than we did 10 or 20 years ago? Probably not. Are we buying more clothing than we did before? Probably not. Are the means in which we're getting to those things fundamentally different? Without question. Are we accessing our bank to figure out what's happening more often than we did 10 or 20 years? Without question. Are we more thorough when we're buying something online? Without question. So these interactions become exceedingly important, but the statistics of how much this is driving additional demands for your data platform are pretty compelling. So in that example that I just walked you through on buying that pair of jeans, that one transaction, believe it or not, in aggregate across e-commerce, there are about 1,000 interactions for every transaction. 1,000. So if you had a data solution before that was built for one transaction, you now need to have a management solution for 1,000 interactions. What gets really compelling, though, is if we look beyond the relationship from a customer to a company. How about how you fulfill that order, right? So in this case, there's inventory. The jeans need to be actually made and shipped out. And so when we start to look across a supply chain, which is, as we all know, a multi-dimensional set of interactions across many constituents. Obviously, there's the customer, but you have employees of that company. You've got suppliers, manufacturers, people who are managing warehouses. You've got freight organizations that you need to interface all to get that good out to a customer. And in that situation, that purchase of jeans does kick off additional transactions like a build order, creating inventory, shipping a product. But think about the number of interactions. What if I'm trying to automate a factory? What about the real-time status updates, both front and back office? And when you look at the implications of the data that is processing to make that possible, you actually see 100,000 interactions all relating back to that single transaction. What about machines? So let's assume that we're a company that wants to do ongoing preventative maintenance for our factories or assessing quality across our business. Or what if our end product is not a pair of jeans, but some piece of technology that requires ongoing maintenance and monitoring and aggregating that data to, in turn, improve the product itself? Well, in that case, you move not just from 1,000 to 100,000, but millions of interactions, all based back to that single transaction. This is why the World Economic Forum says that we're seeing more change than we ever have, because this is fundamentally different, a level of scale that we've never seen. So I want to use an example, actually, that's a combination of fiction and nonfiction to dig into this a little bit more. And the true part of this story is that I have a mother-in-law. She's lovely, also true. Even my history teacher would admit that she's lovely. And she's not a person who's grown up depending on technology, quite the contrary. But she finds herself in her small business office, and her group of coworkers have become very, very competitive with respect to fitness. And so it started off with, let's do a step challenge for a month, and then it was let's see how much weight we can lose on a percentage basis, and so on and so forth. So over the last few years, Every holiday I hear about the latest challenge, and I will neither confirm nor deny the story that my children sometimes put on the device and run around the house to help their grandmother out. All true. Now, let me shift to the fictional part of the story, which is I want us to think about an imaginary company that I'm going to call Fitco. And Fitco, in this case, as you could probably imagine, is a company that builds fitness devices for people like my mother-in-law. Now, she lives in Monterey, California, and so it's not just about the functionality of the fitness device, but it has to look good when she's going to work and running around. So this becomes very, very important. They build all kinds of fitness devices, and part of their service is helping their customers with different workouts and ways to monitor things and understand sleep patterns, all in the pursuit of being a healthier person. Well, let's see how Fitco needs to act to be a massively interactive enterprise in service of my mother-in-law and their other customers. So first and foremost, she needs to understand what products they have available. And this is all about the consideration and purchase, and they have to build a website that maintains inventory and appropriately shows her what devices are available and what the benefits are. And she's very cost conscious, also true. And so she's going to be very mindful of what those benefits are. So this is a tough job to make sure that that's up to date, and that's when we're in that 1,000-to-1 interactions to transactions, and ensuring that she, in this case, the customer, has her needs met. But what about the supply chain? How do they build and fulfill those orders? They have to maintain that online catalog. They have to manage their inventory on a real-time basis, and this starts to get pretty complex, because you have different sizes, different styles, different price points, different capabilities. Eventually, the devices need to be shipped when she decides she wants an upgrade. And because of their service, they have back-end offerings around training programs and different things that she can take advantage of. That all needs to be managed in this complex supply chain web to fulfill her demands. But what about the Internet of Things and machines? First of all, Fitco is very proud of their production facilities, so they're using capabilities to constantly monitor their production facilities. They're proactively maintaining and managing all of their machines, but more important to them is they're managing all this real-time fitness data and aggregating it and creating algorithms to improve their very service. And without that, their value proposition goes down. My mother-in-law's customer experience degrades, and quite simply, she goes somewhere else. So it's literally a matter of, business success that they're able to, manage this and do this successfully, or they're going to lose their customer base. Now, in that example that I just took you through, Fitco is doing end-to-end work to manage those applications across each of those touch points. What we're very excited about Couchbase is we are actually already doing that for customers across all three of those various areas. And shown on the graph here are several of the world's leading enterprise customers that have active deployments running on Couchbase to solve these very needs. And I want to give you a sense of the sheer volume of what it means in these various areas. So the first one I want to talk about is Amadeus. They're a multi-billion-dollar global technology company. They were founded in 1987, and they're in the business of being in service to travel agencies and travel sites. But look at their problem statement. How do I support 1 trillion search requests per day? And in their case, it's not 1,000-to-1, which is sort of the average, 300,000-to-1 look-to-book ratio. So leveraging Couchbase, they have over 600 million bookings per year that are processed, which is a lot. But try doing that under 2.5 milliseconds of delay for those 600 million bookings. All high performance, zero downtime. As a matter of fact, they've scaled their organization by a factor of 5 over the last 4 years, never experiencing downtime. This is a massively interactive enterprise. And what about BD, also known as Becton Dickinson, which is an American technology and life sciences company? They're focused on the interaction between a patient and a doctor, in this case around diabetes. And anybody who's had a family member or who unfortunately has diabetes understands how important this relationship is, and making sure that the customization of care is happening on a near real-time basis. But to manage the complexity and scale that information is no small feat. As a matter of fact, the cost to do that with legacy solutions is over $327 billion. And so they've built an IoT-based solution leveraging Couchbase, which brings those two parties together in a way that is never before possible. The patient and the doctor providing the care that we would all want for our loved ones and patients. So why do you need Couchbase? How can we be helpful, and why do we get so excited about enabling the massively interactive enterprise? Well, first, let's set the scene with the unfortunate reality. This is back to the disruption, that despite the fact there's this significant commitment to transform digitally, the simple reality is 90% of digital transformation projects today are failing. And this is a direct result of a survey that we did where we went out and talked to people just like you in North America and Europe and asked them how the projects are going, and they self-reported that 90% are failing or only delivering incremental return, which by definition is not sufficient. 84% of them came back and told us that on that critical path is the legacy database, unable to create the very applications to manage the volume of interactions in a complete and meaningful way because of the way the technology was designed. So we see that as a significant opportunity and have since the creation of our company. Now, I will tell you that building a technology solution in any layer of the IT stack is hard, and it's been hard for a long time because the applications that you run those on are mission critical and your business depends on it. Doing so in today's world with the complexity of deployments we see and the choice of technology, everything from public cloud out to the edge, makes it that much harder. It has to be cloud relevant in all aspects of the core architecture, where you run it, in your environment. As we've shown, the level of scale is unprecedented, unlike anything we've ever seen. Gone are the days that a little downtime is acceptable. It just absolutely cannot happen. 100% uptime is a requirement. Data doesn't just live in a single repository, and as we know, we want to manipulate, move, manage, work with data at any given point, independent really of our connectivity. So it has to be relevant at the edge, and the applications that we are used to, we all know how frustrating it is. We have several people that were complaining earlier that they didn't have Wi-Fi on the flight out. You would have thought they had to walk from California to New York, right? We demand intelligence from our applications, that it's asking us questions that we didn't even think to ask ourselves, that we're getting recommendations for things that we weren't even thinking about. All that has to be 100% secure, and the real kicker is it has to be cheaper than it was before. Hard problems to solve. But I stand in front of you with confidence in saying that Couchbase has figured all this out. And we've figured all this out in a way that enables you to manage those interactions across those use cases, unlike any other provider in the industry. Let's start with the business problems that we solve. First and foremost, we help you create customer experiences that otherwise would not be possible. Secondly, we allow you to innovate faster and get to market. Gone are the days of managing a bunch of changes and coming up with an application idea, and 2 to 3 months later, you finally have that up and running after you've gone through all your change management. Things need to happen quickly or you lose your competitive edge. And finally, we want to help you reduce your total cost of operations. We're very aware that the demands on you continue to go up, but the budget and people resources that you have to satisfy those requirements aren't going up at the same pace. And that's a big point of how we think about our architecture and our business to be in service of you. Now, traditionally, there were two types of databases, transactional database and analytical database. And I want to come full circle to a term that I introduced earlier, engagement. Couchbase has built the world's first engagement database. And how do we define engagement? Successful management of interactions over time. That's what we are in the business of. We are helping you with that scale, complexity, in fulfilling the application challenges across those use cases. And it's a different approach. Legacy databases were inflexible, they were expensive, and they were unable to perform at this level of scale. Couchbase have solved those problems while being relevant across the technology challenges I presented earlier. And how have we done that? We've built an end-to-end platform. It goes back to the very early days of Couchbase, where we combined industry-leading caching technology with a document-oriented database. We built an in-memory, shared nothing, scale-out architecture that performs at a speed that other companies simply do not provide. We then added data access technologies, everything from key value to a very unique query language that we call Nickel. We've added full text search, we're adding operational analytics, and we do that everything from the public cloud all the way out to the edge. Never sacrificing performance, but also giving you the ability to manage the complexity of orchestration and changes across your environment to give you the flexibility that you need. So it is about unmatched agility while never sacrificing performance at scale and giving you the ease of management. And over the course of this morning, you're going to hear more about this. In a moment, Robbie's going to get up and talk about how we've built architectural differentiation to ensure that these statements are and continue to be true. And then Scott's going to take you through some specifics of product releases on the very delivery against this platform. So we are very focused on being the enterprise technology company that helps you solve your real business problems. But the way we do that and why we have so much pride and why you'll feel that as you walk around the show today and hear from both our employees as well as our customers is we have solved some of the most complicated computer science problems that exist in the industry. But we do that in service of new business models and enabling you to be very successful. And that's why our mission is to be the data platform that revolutionizes digital innovation. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for being a part of Couchbase.